Today is the day. I'm finally taking the new Rip Cycles Basic 29 out on its very first ride. I'm super stoked to tell you all about it. I've actually got a GoPro here that I'm gonna strap on and just give you my thoughts real time as I'm riding. So I was given this frame by Brian at Rip Cycles, and I've taken about a month or two to actually transfer all the parts off of my RSD middle child onto this new frame. If you want to see that process, I'll go ahead and link this video here, but I am dying to get this thing out for a ride, so I'm going to make this super brief. Let's get out on the trail. I'm currently at the Rancho La Costa Trail System, just east of Encinitas, California, and I'm on the Switchbacks Trail, climbing my way up to the top. And the first thing that I've noticed has nothing to do with the frame, and that's that I've set this bike up with too stiff a gearing. There's been some punchy little climbs, and I can tell that the 3018 I put on this just ain't gonna cut it for me. I was running 3020 on the middle child, but I put 3018 on so that I could run these chainstays in their shortest setting. Hey there. Another thing I found is that my left thumb keeps reaching for the dropper lever. I chose not to put a dropper post on this bike. Sorry. I wasn't gonna make it anyway. Thank you.
You're on a hardtail, man. That's cool.
It's fun. Thank you. I'm not running a dropper post on this because this frame takes a 31.6 post. My middle child had a 30.8. So one of the reasons why I think the lack of a dropper post isn't gonna be a huge issue is that since I have this set up as a single speed, I'm doing most of my climbing standing. And that brings me to my saddle choice, which if you saw my build video, is actually an Odyssey Aitken seat. It's a BMX seat, and it's a weird choice, but I love Mike Aitken, and so it's cool to be running his seat. I'll probably change that over when I get a dropper back and put some gears on for more seated climbing, because I don't think this seat's the most comfortable ever, but it's getting the job done. All right, but how about some frame-based info? This Basic 29 is intended, holy dang, is intended to run 29-inch wheels. I, however, am running 27.5 because I wanted to run the same setup that I had on my RSD, so I could really just compare the two frames. Thankfully, I'm not having any crank clearance issues. This thing only has a bottom bracket drop of 20 millimeters, which is why I thought that that would work fine. I also run 165 mil cranks, so keep that in mind too. The reach on this bike is 470 millimeters. That's 5 mils longer than the RSD, but it actually feels a little shorter. And I think the reason for that is the super steep seat tube angle at 77 degrees and the super slack head tube angle at 63 degrees. Now I'm under forking this a little bit and running a smaller wheel, so it's probably more like a 65-degree head tube angle, but regardless, the seated reach feels small. So those are all things that I've noticed, but what about what I haven't noticed yet? I'll say I haven't noticed any particularly suppleness in the steel frame. This is my first time riding a steel frame, and I didn't know how apparent or obvious that was gonna be straight off the bat. Jeez, making a fool out of myself with this stupid gearing. So all that being said is I haven't felt that on these climbs, but I'm really excited to see if I'll feel that more on the descents. One thing that might be impacting my climbing is the extra 2 pounds or so of the bike. I don't know. I think it's mostly the gearing though. All right, so I am riding down the drop down trail, also known as the NASCAR trail here, and it's a super rocky, janky trail. So it should be a good way to put this thing to the test. And already it feels fun. Okay, I'm starting to feel that suppleness now. This feels a lot less harsh than it does on the middle child. That's cool. Oh, I'm glad I'm able to notice that. Oh yeah, this feels good. I'm not pushing it super hard yet. Oh, it's poppy too. Even with those slightly longer chainstays, that front end comes up easy. Phew. Fun stuff. Yeah. This trail got so rutted. We've had a lot of, oh my gosh, speaking of, a lot of rain recently. It's wanting to eat me up. I'm not noticing the short reach to be a bigger issue when I'm descending. And I do tend to like a bit of a smaller bike than most because I like it to be a little more poppy and playful. But I was worried it was gonna feel too cramped and kind of swirly. And I'm definitely not getting those vibes, even into super chunky stuff like that. Well, I'm getting back to the van with just a little bit of time before the sun is setting. Hopefully I get back before it's too dark, but I have to say, I've been very impressed with this bike. A super fun descender, and not bad on the climbs either. Well, it did get dark. So I'm back the next day because I wanted to close this video out right and kind of just give you my final thoughts about my first time on my Rip Cycles Basic 29. First things first, the frame felt great. Like you heard me say earlier, I actually could feel the kind of softer, more forgiving nature of the steel frame. And I was kind of surprised that I was able to notice that. It kind of felt like you maybe took a couple PSI out of your tires, but without the kind of harsh bottom out that you'd get if that was the case. It does feel just a little bit small, but I actually didn't feel like that was holding me back as much as I thought it would. Granted, I only rode for 4-ish miles, so on a longer ride, it might be a little more uncomfortable, but I was hitting some pretty steep, chunky sections that I would have thought a smaller bike would have been a little hairy on, but it wasn't bad. Speaking of the rocks and techie stuff, on this trail there is hardly any seated climbing, so the fact that I didn't have a dropper post and that I was running a BMX seat wasn't a big deal, but I don't expect that to last super long. Hopefully a dropper post will be on this bike within the next couple weeks, but we'll see. Maybe I'll get used to running it the way it is. The other thing I need to change is definitely my gearing. That, of course, has nothing to do with the frame, but the 3018 that I put on here to try to pull the chainstays in as close as I could just ain't gonna cut it. I'm not fit enough for that for the steep trails that I usually ride. And that about wraps it up. So Brian, thank you so much for giving me this frame. Like I've said many times before, it's beautiful, but I can now say that it rides great as well. And I'm really excited to keep spending more time with it, tinkering with it, messing with it. And I'll of course keep you all updated on what those changes are and what my thoughts are on them. If you have an idea that you'd like to see me try with this bike, go ahead and put that down in the comments. While you're there, please hit the like and the subscribe. And after that, hop on your bike, whatever it is, go for a ride, and hopefully I'll see you out there.